All right. Welcome everyone to our session today. Today we're going to be talking about how Celigo and Amazon reinvent supply chain operations. I'm super excited to have everyone here. My name is Jeremy Erwin. I'm a principal solutions consultant here at Celigo. Before we get started, let's cover a few housekeeping items. So first off, this session is being recorded, so everyone who registered will get the recording. Also, we want to hear from you, so please use the Q&A, the question and answer panel, to ask your questions. We'll get to those at the end, and if we run out of time, we will make sure that we respond to your questions after this webinar. I'm very happy to welcome our guest, Derek. Derek, please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Derek Majewski. I'm a Senior Partner Development Manager here at Amazon on the Amazon Supply Chain Services team. So I'm excited to be with you today. I've been with Amazon for the past 9 years. My experience is primarily in e-commerce, but I know quite a bit about all things logistics. So very excited to be working with Celigo to make this more and more achievable for brands like yourselves to use. So thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's start with some stats here, Derek. Could you walk us through some of the numbers that we're seeing here and what this actually means for the brands who want to protect their growth?
Yeah, so Amazon is obsessed with customers. And on the Amazon Supply Chain Services team, we have two main sets of customers. We have end customers, shoppers, but we also have brands. And so when we're thinking about what we could bring to basically support both brands and shoppers, we did a ton of research. And there were three things that kind of kept coming up in our research that we thought was really important. So the first one was that 35% of brands consistently met delivery times during peak season. In my mind, that's lower than I would expect it to be, right? If only a third of brands are really meeting that consistent delivery time during the busiest time of the year, that means a whole lot of customers aren't getting their packages when they would like them and where they need them. The other thing that we saw was that 48% of shoppers are abandoning checkout due to extra shipping costs. I don't know about you guys, but I'm an Amazon Prime member and I'm super used to items being delivered to my house for free. And I know that if I'm shopping on an Instagram ad, for example, I see a really great product come up, but I then see that there's $5 shipping on a $30 shirt. I'm less inclined to make that purchase. And most shoppers are with me. A lot of people just drop right out of cart if there's a shipping cost. And the final thing is that 70% of consumers stated that they wished that retailers offered that Amazon Prime-like service or experience. People have become so accustomed to the ability to order items, have them be delivered quickly in transparency, and then potentially return them very easily if something isn't quite right. And so with those three trends, Amazon looked to basically put something to market that would help resolve all three of these problems.
Yeah. And Derek, I think I definitely feel the pain of the middle number there around the extra shipping costs. So from our side, we're also seeing brands face key challenges around, and I think this is ties into your point there, Derek, right? Increasing shopper expectations, right? Yeah. How soon can I get my order? What if my T-shirt or my pants, what if they do not fit? Can I return this for free, or is it going to cost me additional money? And what is the return process, right? All of the different sales channels that these merchants are selling on, the experience is drastically different depending on where you're selling, which segues into the multi-channel operations, right? So having that clear path forward when it comes to things like inventory. What does it cost to list my product? Are there any fees associated with listing my product on all these different channels? And then lastly, that stagnant growth and profitability, right? So every merchant that I speak with, they're looking to enter new markets, new sales channels to get their product out there more, right? And what I typically see is they start down one path of a sales channel. Could be their direct storefront, could be a marketplace, but then they're looking to expand, right? So to really get their product and their brand out there. With this, they're looking for increased sales, right? They're also looking at ways that they're able to incorporate AI into that customer experience, or even within the back end stack there. Right? Now, the reality of running commerce operations today really falls into these three segments, I'll say, plus more, right? And these are really the six key that we traditionally see, right? So as we mentioned, selling on multiple channels is very important, right? Making sure that your product is able to be exposed to all types of buyers, whether they're on TikTok Shop, on Shopify, so on and so forth. But also making sure that, I always tie this back to customer satisfaction, right? That inventory fragmentation, when you're overselling products, making sure that, you have that system of truth or the source of truth when it comes to accurate inventory levels so that you're able to publish those on all of the different sales channels. If you have high volume or even any volume, right? Manual order processing is never fun for the user that's doing it, but they're not also being routed appropriately, right? So this could be, hey, this needs to go off into the warehouse team so they're able to pick, pack, and ship this, right? Or maybe someone needs to be notified before that hits the warehouse team, like an approval process, right? So this then ties into having those fulfillments being delayed going out, right? So customers are going to navigate to your website, probably leverage your chat and ask the age-old question, where is my order? Wismo, right? And since that fulfillment detail isn't being updated back to that storefront, right? Customers, your team, they're not knowing exactly where that data is residing. Is it in the ERP? Is it in the WMS, et cetera? So they don't have that visibility across all of the different applications and within their tech stack. And with this, right, customers are expecting to have that product on their front porch or on their doorstep tomorrow. And if you're not able to accurately display tracking information when it was fulfilled and things like that, you really don't have a value to sell that customer the products, right? Much like Derek mentioned, the shipping costs. If you're not able to fulfill an order in a week or 2 weeks or provide an update on it, customer satisfaction starts to drastically decrease. Okay, so we're going to launch a poll here. Which of the following that we just covered are your biggest pain points in commerce operations today? And while we have this poll launched, Derek, can you provide us a real-world example of, maybe like a manual order processing or delayed fulfillment updates to something like a TikTok Shop?
Yeah, so in chatting with customers, brands, two of the big things that we see come up over and over is that manual order processing is a killer to scale, right? At some point, you need the ability to have your systems talk to each other without a person being in the middle of that. Or things will break when you have a viral moment or a really large peak season. So manual order processing is always a pain point. I think on that, like delayed fulfillment updates, a really good example here is like TikTok Shop. They have updated their performance standards for delivery. And so to be able to remain in compliance, you have to be giving the customer updates regularly on where their item is in the shipment process. And I know that as a customer, I love that too. I just bought an item for my wife for her birthday, and being able to see where it was at in its shipment process made me more satisfied as a shopper. So those are two big things that come up with brands regularly. What are we seeing in the poll?
All right. And if anyone cannot find the poll is in the top right. Just to call that out here real quick. So it looks like multi-channel selling is the one that's getting the most here. Multi-channel selling, inventory fragmentation, manual order processing.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting stats around multi-channel selling that are happening right now. Most brands are expanding from the traditional 2 or 3 channels to up to 8, 9, 10 channels. And that's a lot to manage. So I think that is a huge, especially with social commerce being so prevalent, right. That's a huge focus for many brands.
Yeah. And so, Derek, how do you scale fulfillment without adding operational overhead?
Yeah, so I'm excited to share a little bit about Amazon Supply Chain Services today with the group. So you're hearing it here super early. So Amazon Supply Chain Services is basically an offering that Amazon has opened where we're using our logistics infrastructure and we're opening those up to merchants, brands, sellers. And that's the same network that powers Amazon.com, and it's now available for your business itself. So Amazon multi-channel fulfillment specifically is the fulfillment layer of that network. So you'd be using Amazon as a 3PL essentially. And that would allow merchants to fulfill orders from any sales channel. That could be your Shopify website, D2C. That could be TikTok, social commerce. That could be some of the other marketplaces that you might sell through using those Amazon fulfillment centers. And when we think about what the value is to brands and to merchants, there's a handful of things. First, reduced warehousing and carrier overhead. Ideally, if you're using one pool of inventory, we're able to turn through that faster. And then you don't have to maintain as much stock in that single pool. We're also seeing that brands are really valuing the ability to use that single fulfillment network that works across every channel. So as I mentioned, rather than having silos of inventory, different 3PLs that manage different channels, having one network that can deliver to any channel is really important. We are also seeing that merchants really love the fulfillment performance. It's really, really hard to be as fast as Amazon across as many geographies as we are. And here in the United States, most people are getting their Prime orders in 1 to 3 days, super, super fast. And then the final value that we're really seeing with merchants is that ability to scale. If you have a product that goes viral and sales go from 100 units a day to 100,000 units a day, Amazon can manage that demand for you. Same thing with holiday season, or if you are, a brand that sells costumes for Halloween, like we are built to scale up and down with your business. And so to show you though the broader view of Amazon supply chain services, so this is an architecture diagram showing all the different services that Amazon has to offer and where they would line up with your supply chain. So freight, distribution and fulfillment, and then parcel shipping. So really how it works is Amazon can pick up inventory from the point of origin in potentially China, and then we can inbound it into Amazon's network using essentially sea freight. Once it's in Amazon's network, in storage network, we can then send it to anywhere within that network. So Amazon will position those items dynamically. So we'll spread it out using our advanced technology. And we're really trying to make sure that the items are placed as close to where your shoppers are likely to place orders. Amazon then will distribute and automatically replenish across channels when supply is looking lower than anticipated. So we can move both bulk inventory for you as well as individual cartons and individual products. And those decisions are all optimized on real time and based on real data to basically fulfill and deliver orders to customers as reliably as possible. And then if you need to send inventory elsewhere, we have you covered there too. So Amazon can manage distribution services that enable delivery to third-party locations, and that can be brick and mortar stores, your own warehouses, or somewhere else. And that's all done in bulk. And I want to go over a couple of stats that we're seeing in performance pieces of performance data that we're seeing. So brands that are working with us are thus far very, very pleased. So there's hundreds of thousands of sellers worldwide that have been running on this network and using Amazon to grow their businesses. Since opening the network, sellers have experienced not just success, but also growth by leveraging our logistics expertise and employing services across freight, fulfillment, and last mile. We're seeing that customers are getting boosts in sales because of consistently fast delivery, reduced stockouts, and improved inventory turnover rates. And we're not just looking at success on Amazon.com. These sellers are also saying that they're seeing success on their non-Amazon volume. So we've been able to build for those channels as well. And so all this is to say that opening Amazon's network to businesses, no matter where they choose to sell, has already given these businesses a chance to put their focus back on where it should be, on their business, rather than on supply chain distractions.
Great point, Derek. And none of this works if your business can't reliably connect to Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And that's really where we see the integration gap. right? So it's very important to ensure that you have a reliable integration to and from Amazon, as well as all of your other sales channels, right? And without that reliable connection, everything breaks down, right? So when your inventory doesn't sync, we covered this a few slides back, but when your inventory isn't syncing or doesn't sync appropriately, right? That's when overselling occurs across all channels, not just your direct-to-consumer site, but also all the marketplaces that you're selling on as well, right? Which then downstream leads to customers being upset, right? They purchase the product, it's taking longer than normal or longer than they expect to actually arrive to them. Next is, when orders aren't routing automatically, right? So you have manual work at every step and every order that gets created. So when you think of all of the different sales channels that you're looking to sync into something like an Amazon MCP or into the ERP, right? This is where every new sales channel that's being added, it's a new manual process that users have to account for within their day-to-day operations. Right? Customer communication breaks down, right? They're not able to see when those fulfillments or when those shipments are actually being delivered to them. They're not being provided updates on their orders. Has it been confirmed? Has it been fulfilled? So on and so forth. So the customer support team is then left dealing with spikes in cases or support tickets, right? And that customer trust that they have with the brand eventually starts to erode, right? Operational teams then look to gain time back that they're losing to manual work, right? So by automating this process from start to finish, whether it's the inventory syncing, the orders routing into MCF, fulfillments flowing back into the different sales channels, with that integration, right? This is where those operations teams can then be more efficient at their job, automating those manual processes and focusing on those higher value tasks that are more important to the role and ultimately more important to the organization or to the brand. Okay. So there's three key areas that we'll really talk about today when it comes to MCF. The first one's going to be the order sync. So every brand out there has customers placing orders across probably multiple channels, right? Could be your direct-to-consumer site, could be another marketplace, but there needs to be a way to get those orders over into Amazon MCF, right? And with the Celigo integration, this is where we're able to take those orders, regardless of the sales channels, and route those over into Amazon multi-channel fulfillment, right? Automatically, no manual routing, no users logging in to say this needs to go here. This is a new sales channel. We're able to pick those up automatically from the ERP or your source of truth to route over into Amazon for the fulfillment process. But we can't sync orders over into Amazon without first having the inventory over there, right? So the inventory management piece is where we're then able to have that single source of truth, which you'll hear me probably say a dozen more times, but having that single source of truth or system of record across all of your different channels, right? So this then allows you to have inventory accounts for each of the sales channels, right? And within the ERP. So when you're looking to display those inventory levels to customers, right, it's always going to be accurate regardless of the sales channel. We're pulling from that single source of truth. If you wanted to incorporate things like maybe quantity buffers, those are all capabilities of the integration that you are able to incorporate based on your specific business process, all right? Now, the fulfillment sync back to the customer, right? So this is, again, probably one of the, if not the most important integration or flow that we'll see here, right? Because this is really getting that tracking and fulfillment information, the items that were packaged, the quantities that were packaged, right? Updating the order status on that sales channel, again, whether it's the direct consumer e-commerce storefront or another marketplace out there, right? So being able to obtain that fulfillment data within that source of truth and then having that flow back out into the sales channel, ultimately notifying the end customer that the order has been shipped and providing them with the tracking number. Now, if they're anything like me, they'll refresh the tracking link probably 5 times a minute to see if that truck has delivered it yet. But this is really how you have that automated architecture across your operations when it comes to automating the different areas of Amazon MCF. Okay. When it comes to being able to configure or implement these type of automations across the organization, this is where we look to accelerate that with AI onboarding, right? So Celigo has really what I'll call 3 buckets or 3 pillars of ways that we look to accelerate onboarding of automations and integrations. Okay. The first is going to be templates. Templates are pre-built by our product management team. These incorporate things like best practices for Amazon MCF, right? So the three processes that we just walked through there, syncing orders from the ERP over to MCF, syncing inventory, and then ultimately syncing the fulfillment information from MCF back into the ERP. These are all covered with those templates right out of the box. You're not having to reinvent the wheel or configure these from scratch. You're able to leverage these templates, which you can really think of as building blocks that you're able to add to or remove from. Okay. The second pillar here is going to be Celigo Ora, right? So Celigo Ora is going to be, I always like to say it's going to be your best friend within the platform, right? So Celigo Ora is the in-platform AI experience. This is where you are able to simply have a conversation with Ora within the chat in the platform. This can then do things like build workflows for you. If you're encountering errors or exceptions, this is a way that Ora can assist in addressing those error or exceptions, right? If you need to configure new connections or new integrations, Ora is able to assist with everything across the breadth of the platform. Lastly, we have Celigo CLI and MCP, right? And this is going to be for more of those hands-on or developers across the organization, right? So this is the headless access that we hear about within the market, where you are able to then really configure, but also manage these integrations programmatically through something like a Claude Code, right? So you're using natural language to configure all these integrations even more quickly than you do with things like templates and Celigo Ora, right? Because you're having natural conversations within, I'm going to say Claude Code. That's what we'll walk through here today, right? And this is where those integration flows would be automatically created, leveraging that natural language context that you are providing. All right, so what we're going to get into next here is the onboarding, right? So how can we onboard integration flows between Amazon MCF and ERP? Okay, so within Claude Code specifically here, right? This is where we can see in pretty much plain text, right? Users are able to go in and say that they would like to build out this integration. In this particular instance, it's Amazon Multichannel Fulfillment and NetSuite. Okay. The main focus for this, as we can see, is that inventory sync. Okay. So we can see that the LLM here is using CLI commands to actually determine how to accomplish that request within the platform. Okay. As we see some of the details that are being passed back, things like NetSuite not being one world, right? So the subsidiaries features are disabled. This is a way that we're able to then obtain the data around the unique connections that are being made to each of those applications. We're able to see the specific NetSuite profile, as well as the specific Amazon connection that we are that we have established here. And now it is prompting us to, based on certain dependencies, right? So do we need to create the product sync first, or do we just want to proceed with that inventory sync? So by having what I'll say is a natural conversation, this is where we're able to then build out that flow within the integration platform. And we can then see that based on things like the product sync, right? What are we going to do for the sellable locations? What are we going to do for the damaged locations from the Amazon MCF side? These are ways that we can then go through to simply answer these questions right within, again, in this instance, Claude Code, right? By providing that input or the answers to those questions, this is where we're able to then automatically configure that within the UI, and we can see how all of the information is then being pulled back based on the configuration here. Okay, so we have things like the GL, right? What GL should be impacted for inventory, right? At this point here, this is where builders are going in here and saying, yeah, this all looks good, right? So all of the information that you spit back or provided to me, this all looks good. Go ahead and start building this out. Okay. At this point, the build is happening behind the scenes, right? So we can see that we're writing that against the Celigo account. Any scripts, mappings, connections that would need to be configured are all happening within this step here. We can see that we have 3 connections being established. All 3 connections have been tested. They're up and running. They are online, right? Now what we're looking to do is just a step further, where we're looking at the exact data that we would need to extract from our source application. Okay. So when we're looking to extract data from the source application here, right, we're leveraging our export step from the source application, and my user here is then going through asking to use a specific save search within NetSuite, right? And then we are scheduling this to run every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, this flow would run in a batch-based instance to pick up new or modified records that are then communicated over to Amazon MCF. Okay. And in this particular instance, we're looking at the product flow here. We can then see the inventory adjustment sync. So both of these flows are then configured to extract data from, in this instance, NetSuite, where we're then pushing that over into Amazon, right? That last step where we are importing the data ultimately into Amazon. And then if we take a look at the inventory sync here, right? This is where we're then able to get our inventory levels from Amazon, look up the specific ASINs or items within NetSuite, right? And then adjust that inventory right within the ERP there. Okay. So this is a way that you're then able to have an automated process for onboarding any integration, right? We're really focusing on MCF today, but let's say there's an additional integration flow that you would need to build out between Amazon and another application. This is a way that you're able to expedite and accelerate that onboarding. All right. Now let's talk about how this all connects, right? So Derek, where does this architecture, typically break down? If I head over to the next slide here, right? We have our brand sales channels on the left-hand side, and then I'll say left middle here we have that integration layer, Celigo there, where we're passing the records, Amazon MCF and ASCS, and then the back office ERP here, right? So orders flowing in from the different channels, right, into MCF, shipments flowing back to those sales channels, and then ensuring that inventory stays accurate. What's the weakest link here? Where's this typically break down?
So there's a couple places that I've seen brands have challenges doing all of this. The first is really that they have siloed data and there's no way for them to streamline it, basically in having those systems talk to each other. And that does end up leading to a breakdown, right? Pools of data is not so useful for most businesses. The other thing that I've seen is that with AI, it's only going to be as effective as the data that's being fed to it. So the data has to be rich and accurate and in real time. So that way brands are actually really able to utilize this. This is something that I'm excited about with this onboarding option from Celigo, is that it's combining pools of data that you probably already have connected as a Celigo customer, or if you're not a Celigo customer yet, they can help you get kind of in place. And it also is bringing you to value much faster. We've seen that NetSuite implementations can take 6+ weeks using traditional API routes. And with this AI assisted onboarding, it could be much faster, much faster. So we're very excited about it and the opportunity that this presents for brands and then ultimately shoppers on the back end.
Great. Yeah. And Derek, you brought up a great point there, right? Siloed data, right? And one of my favorite customers of Celigo here, Therabody, right? They had siloed data, right? Disconnected systems. And what that the impact that had on the business was that created costly bottlenecks, right? So between ERP, e-commerce, 3PL systems, so on and so forth, Therabody was actually forced to hire seasonal help, right? Just to keep up with that holiday order volume. Once Celigo was in the picture, that's where Celigo then became that integration backbone that connected not just Amazon, but all of the different sales channels that that they were looking to connect to. So Therabody, even to this day, continues to use Celigo to connect Amazon storefronts, right? So when we talk about like Seller Central, right, FBM and FBA, Therabody's connecting to those Amazon Seller Central accounts that they have, but they're also connecting along with other marketplaces out there in 3PLs, right? So I think we all go into all the different marketplaces. We're all able to see the new products that are out there, and a lot of the marketplaces have a lot of these brands' products right on the front page, right? So by Therabody leveraging Celigo, this is where they are able to then communicate all of that data to eliminate that siloed problem that you just mentioned there, Derek.
Yeah. And we did have a question come in, Jeremy. One of Katie asked if we need Claude Code subscription to be able to use this service.
For CLI, yes, I believe you would need that Claude Code subscription. Since you are just leveraging Claude Code there, you're just tying into Celigo's integration platform, leveraging CLI there.
Cool. And this is a good reminder too, if anybody has questions, because we've covered a lot of dense information, but if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A and we'll answer as many of them as we can live. So yeah, and I'm excited about Therabody. I mean, they've been a great customer to work with. I love the product personally, and their success with MCF and Amazon has been really strong. So thank you to the Celigo team for helping make that happen.
Absolutely. And really what we've looked to provide to our customer base is having that single pane of glass that not only just connects application to application, right? Shopify to Amazon MCF or TikTok Shop to Amazon MCF, but also any big box retailers that you may be connecting to, right? If you're selling in the Walmarts, the Targets, so on and so forth, Celigo has that all-in-one platform where you're able to automate any type of integration that's needed, whether it's EDI, whether it's ELT or ETL type processes with data ingestion. If you need to incorporate things like agents or configure your own MCP servers, we have one platform that you're able to build all of these different solutions on. Right, follows a common theme as well of low code, no code. Right, so being able to accelerate the speed of which you're able to build out these integrations. Right? So you don't necessarily need to have that deep technical expertise. This is where teams can spin up large numbers of integrations, right, in a rapid pace, and eliminating that reliance that they have on expensive external consultants. Right, empowering those in-house teams to really take this in-house to build out all automations that the company would need moving forward. Okay. This is also where that peak season, right? Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I feel like with everyone on the call here is probably your busy time, right? You have that one operational layer, right? So you may have a team that's building out these integrations, and they own the governance over the platform, right? But line of business still needs to be able to then manage, right? So this is where users would be able to see things like any errors that are being encountered on the platform, right? If you wanted to configure notifications, ensuring that these any exceptions or errors are not going unaddressed for longer than X amount of time. Those are all things that you're able to configure within the one integration platform that can solve all of your omni-channel commerce needs. So again, that one operational layer to build on here, and really once you have that figured out, there's real revenue impact here, right? So what we've seen, and Derek, I appreciate your comments on this as well, but we saw 64% of brands saw that their revenue increase with that 1 to 2 day delivery time. Derek, curious your thoughts on that. Any additional input you'd like to provide there?
Yeah, there's a couple places where that's coming into play. One is on the conversion rate on the actual site. So shoppers are seeing that they're going to get the item faster. As part of using multi-channel fulfillment, we can do what's called a fast badge on your page, and it would say order by, receive by. And that's verified down to the customer actual location. And when customers see how quickly they're going to get an item, they don't think about buying the item for as long. So conversion rates go up. Which is great. We're also seeing that those fast badges can be applied across a variety of different like social placements, Instagram, Google, for example. And again, that's increasing the click-through rate on the ad. So you're getting more people that are interested in your product because they can get it quickly, and they're buying at a higher rate because, again, they can get it quickly. So I think that's really exciting, and it's super tangible for brands that are looking to increase their growth, which is pretty much everybody. And it's hard to do, but supply chain can be a growth lever, not just a cost center. So.
Awesome. So, Derek, I'll let you kick this slide off, and then I'll wrap us up here.
Yeah. So wherever you're at in your journey, there's a couple different places you can kind of get started. So the first is figuring out if multi-channel fulfillment is right for you. What I'd suggest is we look at together your products that you might want to fulfill to end customers. We can talk through how you're doing that today, what your logistics architecture looks like, and then make suggestions on where Amazon Supply Chain Services and specifically multi-channel fulfillment could help make that more effective. And there's some questions that I'll get to that will give kind of better examples here. But there are quite a few specific use cases that we can get into where multi-channel fulfillment might make sense. If you want to use multi-channel fulfillment and you think that managing it manually is the best option, or you're doing it manually today, that's what I meant to say, sorry. We can actually look at that integration that you have with MCF and decide where some automation might make things more scalable for your team. And that's really important, especially as Prime Day is coming up. And then we move into Q4. We want to make sure that your team is set up to manage your business and not have to manage your freight services, essentially. And then, Jeremy, I think the last one I'd pass back to you.
Yeah. So whether you're on MCF but managing it manually, or you're ready to explore AI onboarding, right? This is where Celigo is able to assist in that automation layer, right? Where we have pre-built integrations for Amazon MCF that you could take advantage of. If you're ready to explore AI onboarding, this is where our team can assist in ironing out the details of the exact applications or processes that you need to automate, and then demonstrate ways that you are able to then onboard that quicker, leveraging things like CLI. Okay. So we have one last survey coming up, and we'd love to hear from you. So that should be popping up here for the survey. Please, give us your feedback on what you'd like or what you're more interested in, what you're most interested in here. And then, Derek, to your point, I do believe we have some questions in Q&A that we can start tackling here.
Yeah. Do you want to read them out, Jeremy, or do you want me to read the questions?
I can read them out to you here real quick, Derek.
Cool.
I'm gonna go top to bottom. So what lessons from Amazon supply chain can realistically be adopted by smaller enterprises?
It's a good question, Lynn. I think that and this does come up a lot as brands are thinking about working with Amazon and Amazon supply chain services. We are built for the ultimate scale, but we can serve businesses of any size. So I think the big pieces that I would leave you with is, how are you meeting your customers' needs today? Are you getting the items to them quickly, transparently, reliably? And if there are places in your supply chain where you could improve speed, you can improve the reliability, you could improve the transparency, those are the places I would spend time looking into Amazon supply chain services. We can get very, very granular. So an example, a brand that I'm working with, they have warehouses in Texas. They want to maintain their warehouses in Texas, but they want to be able to deliver to customers in California faster. So they're using multi-channel fulfillment just for that West Coast route, essentially. So we can get super granular on the actual routing, and that is something that Celigo would be able to help support. So let's talk a little bit more about it, Lynn, and we can figure out where it makes the most sense to spend time together on this. Jeremy, what would you add there? Anything?
No, I think you hit all the points around supply chain and specifically with Celigo, right? If this is just, we need to leverage MCF for a specific use case, right? Whether it's like West Coast, East Coast, ship to locations, that's exactly where Celigo is able to accelerate that onboarding, right? So leveraging things like branching within the flow, looking at the data, determining where that needs to be fed into. So definitely some synergies there between Amazon and Celigo. Next question that we had here, Derek, I think this one may be for you, and I can add some insight here as well. What happens if I have the same SKU at FBA and at my warehouse?
Yep. So FBA is fulfilled by Amazon. That is items in Amazon's network. And what you're mentioning here, Alexander, is super common. Brands have their own warehouse and they manage certain logistics from that warehouse. And then they have fulfilled by Amazon, which is fulfilling to their prime shoppers on Amazon.com. If you have items in FBA today, those can be turned on for MCF. And what we do basically is we say we would like to not only fulfill to Prime on Amazon.com, we also want to fulfill to other channels. And so you can pick what those channels are. The most common ones that we're seeing right now are D2C websites and then social commerce channels like a TikTok shop, for example. And so some additional use cases to kind of think about here is there might be some items that your team absolutely wants to fulfill for price reasons, for size reasons, whatever that may be. But maybe there are key items that you know customers buy all the time that are smaller, maybe a little bit lighter, perfect for Amazon's network, essentially. And so those are items that we can fulfill. We also see sometimes brands have a warehouse, but their staff wants to be able to have a weekend, right? So maybe they're not open on Saturdays and Sundays. That's a routing rule where Amazon MCF, that FBA pool of inventory, could continue to deliver items that are purchased by customers over the weekend. Or if you have a channel like TikTok Shop that has a super high standard for how quickly items are shipped out and the tracking information that's available along the way for shoppers, that could be a place where Amazon MCF helps augment your existing warehouse network. So there's definitely ways to have kind of that hybrid system, part Amazon and part homegrown.
Yeah, and I think Celigo then just adds on to that, right? By configurable integration flows that you're then able to configure or designate for that specific process, right? So if it is based on, Derek, I loved your point, right? The warehouse team taking a weekend off. Those are all things that can be configured within the integration as well. So, covered on both sides of it there. Next question, I believe I answered this, but I did want to just address it while we are on the Q&A. So in the demonstration, we showed an example of connecting to NetSuite. The question is, what if the system, NetSuite in this example, has throttling or bandwidth restrictions? Can I configure Ora or other methods within your platform to take these usage constraints into account so that I am not going over my allowed bandwidth? And the answer to that question is absolutely, right? So within the Celigo platform, we do have the ability to configure things like concurrency based on a connection by connection basis, right? We also have auto throttling built into the platform, so you can stay under your limits for any application within your tech stack, right? We are then able to queue those flows up or queue those integration runs within the dashboard so that any records received, any records or data is what I typically say, received in the time that we hit those throttling limits or, we backed off a bit, we're able to then ensure that none of those records or data go missing in the time, that application was throttled. Furthermore on that, right, this is also where you're able to create unique connections to, if we're using the example of NetSuite, right? So creating unique connections to your instance of NetSuite and then borrowing concurrency from other connections within the platform. So lots of ways there to ensure that you're able to scale on the platform, but also support those high peak and high volume seasons there.
Some great questions. And it tells me that this audience is thinking critically about what we're talking about here. So I'm really excited. If you do want to go deeper on this, you can reach out. The Celigo team will be in touch, and we can talk through your specific use case and where Amazon Supply Chain Services, multi-channel fulfillment, and Celigo AI guided onboarding can be useful for you.
Awesome. I think that is that's all the questions that I see within the chat here. So if you'd like to book a demo, you are able to scan the QR code that's now on your screen. There's also a button at the top right that you're able to leverage there. But Derek and I, we'd love to hear from you all, right? So please reach out to us. We'd love to walk you through what this solution looks like from start to finish, how you're able to implement this in an efficient and fast manner. And with that, I appreciate everyone attending today, and I hope you found this very, very helpful.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Derek. Pleasure having you.